Hello and welcome to another Top Junglers video, where I will be focusing on the best junglers that you can use in ranked to finish the season to reach gold, platinum, diamond, or whatever your goals may be. And again, as a full disclaimer, this is not a cut and dry tier list, rather a collection of the best and strongest junglers that you can use for the end of Season 8 solo queue. That means the total order of these champions is interchangeable to some degree, and that if you're winning with certain champions and you're climbing with them, keep on going. But if you're having trouble climbing up, you're bored, you're not sure what to pick, consider some of these choices and get back to winning ways. We did just have a smaller patch again last night, not too many changes coming around. Master Yi and Wukong both received buffs, and I'll speak about Kane and Rengar respectively when their turn comes up in the video. Of course, the big wildcard is the update of Nunu, and I'm referencing here just in case he ends up being very strong or very weak. If he ends up being very strong, he can of course affect the meta in a different way, so just keep an eye on his win rate and maybe pick him up if you're looking for a bit more of a tank objective focused champion. And now with those disclaimers out of the way, let's begin. The first group of champions that we have are sort of the quintessential bunch. We've seen them a few times in the top tiers or consistently, and in the case of Graves and Taliyah, they have been top tier for a while now. Graves just an absolutely versatile pick, not a lot of downside, very popular, and works pretty much in any elo. Dark Harvest is even an option on him with the speed that he farms, how quickly he can get ahead, his ganks, his damage, his stickiness. All of these things keep Graves at the top. And similar for Taliyah. Once you max up that Q a few ranks, she really clears the jungle very quickly. She has that burst combo when hit altogether, plus a nice engaged CC that can separate members from their teams. Her skill cap is a bit higher than Graves, but given her overall power, she's still a good pick if you want to spend the time to learn her mechanics. Next up we have Jax. He sort of replaced Warwick as a quintessential low elo fighter, but he's also very versatile. The higher you go and you can still use him there, even if we don't see him in the high diamond master and challenger tiers. High disruption, objective focus, very difficult to deal with in teamfights when he's fed, and with the reduction of electrocute junglers and that overall power, it only upped his viability. Now, Queen of the Assassins Evelynn is still around, still very strong, nothing about her has changed. Electrocute is still a good option, and her Harvest is equally as strong. Her fast farming, devastating post 6 ganks, and burst damage really make her unmatched in that regard. However, as with previous iterations, when Kha'Zix was the strongest assassin, or any assassin's the strongest, you have to understand teamfighting mechanics, and you have to understand how to close games when you don't have as much of a objective focus as something like Jax or Graves, and that's the high barrier to entry. Shaco, same thing. Even though he's mostly played by his one-tricks and dedicated fans, his unique style makes him very strong. His win rate has been pretty consistent for a few months now. He has that impact. You can cheese your enemies, focus towers, a lot of options for Shaco, and even solo barons if you want to. But if you're looking to pick Shaco up, it's definitely something you want to really get into and hone those skills. Xin once again shows up on the front page, and sort of between he and Udyr, who I put up first. I just wanted to put Xin up first because his play rate is much higher, and he does have a bit more of a total package that's just much more easy to pick up and get used to, similar to Jax in that regard. Okay, moving on to the next page. Now I said I'll talk about Udyr. His win rate is extremely high. The nerf of the electrocute junglers and anything that sort of hard counters him has made his life a lot easier, but he still has a unique playstyle, and of course his play rate isn't as high as all the other junglers on the previous page, which means you can't take his win rate at straight face value. He has a great early clear, really strong dueling potential early on. Very few junglers can actually match up when he gets into that tiger stance. Not a lot of flash, but definitely some substance. However, if you want flash and a lot of power, Camille is the way to go. Higher skill cap champion, but still has unmatched pressure level 2, long range ganks, insane dive potential, and amazing lockout CC for those priority targets you wish to take off the map. And of course, we're not going to talk as in depth about every champion, but Kindred has received a lot of buffs and changes and even a slight nerf over the recent months. They've seen a lot of pro play where of course the RNG nature of mercs and lane priority isn't really that RNG. In solo queue, if you don't have lane priority and your merc ends up in the river and the enemy jungler is Camille, well, you know, you kinda don't want to just go wandering in there. But if you know how to play around mercs, you can play safely, you're good at eyeing the map, and you are very smart about your rotations, very few junglers offer that much scaling potential and objective control as Kindred. And of course, you know, a game-changing ultimate. Now, some people might be surprised to see Pantheon up here, but that's mostly just because of his insane early game, as well as a global ult. Powerful ults are very useful in solo queue, and when you can save your team or even just zone away the enemy, well, that's just very underrated. Throw that in with his very powerful spam ganking you can get at level 2 and 3, you got yourself a nice package. Just be sure you understand where his limitations lie. And Nocturne may have disappeared slightly, but he is still around and still a devastating solo queue pick, especially if you get fed. But if you don't get fed, you're just like a flying pigeon just going into an enemy team for, well, I'm in Belgium, so I guess lunch. Use the power farming, use the counter ganking potential you have, and don't disappear in AFK. You can have pressure, use it. And yes, Sonic has returned to us. The buffs he received in the previous patch made his spikes less chew toy and more Vlad the Impaler. He's shown to have a good win rate in a majority of ranked brackets. His ganks, his close downs, his taunts, all very, very powerful. And naturally, with the return of ADCs to prominence, someone who scales with AD resistance is definitely going to have more power. Just be mindful of who has QSS before you decide to flash engage. But use that speed and your map movement to get off those ganks early and often. And hooray, we have reached the 3rd main page, and all those comments about Amumu and Hecarim can go away now, because look, I put them. You see, I put them. They exist, but they will have their turn. Let's first talk about the 2 cats, Rengar and Nidalee. And what do I say about Rengar? Extremely face roll, very strong overall, high learning curve for sure, but that ultimate reduction he just got in this recent patch can really bring him up a few notches. And if you're watching this later on and you're saying, why is he on the 3rd page? This is just purely because he's more of a higher elo choice. You can play him wherever you like though, but just be aware, you do need to practice with him a bit to unlock his full potential. With all the people contesting scuttle crabs around that river bush, Rengar definitely likes to set traps and exploit that. You want to try get off an invader too, you want to try get off a gank too, getting a few kills in the early game, and while you can go harvest, a very popular choice has been going fleet footwork for that heal in the jungle, as well as that dueling potential in the river coupled with your water walking and so on. The knife cat certainly has a jump to a step these days. And of course Nidalee always has jumps to a step, but only in the highest tiers of the ranked bracket. I don't recommend it for someone lower down. I didn't even recommend it for me. I did just release a video looking at how score plays though, so if you want to see how to use that early pressure to snowball objectives and just play very, very soundly, that's a good video to watch. But bear in mind, to maximize Nidalee's potential, you not only need good mechanics with her, but also very good jungle understanding. And we welcome Amumu to the front stage. He also received buffs just like Rammus, and while he hasn't seen as much success in the platinums and diamonds as Rammus has, he is definitely a strong low elo pick, and his team fighting prowess is near unmatched if you have a team that follows up. And if you build that Leandri's Torment, you can surprise the enemy team with a bit of mid-game damage to go with your spells. And while his early game isn't as abysmal thanks to the buffs, that late game is still very powerful. Never surrender with Amumu. You never know when you land that 5-man ultimate and your team follows up for the supreme wombo. And now let's talk about a fan favorite, Kane. He just received an E duration buff as well as a Shadow Assassin buff on his E, which is very, very nice, but doesn't solve his general problems of transformation and snowballing. Also the fact that Ras just really outperforms Shadow Assassin in most scenarios. He can still pile out insane damage along with hard CC and survivability, which is something that's just so important, especially when Amumus are running around. If you are looking at that Shadow Assassin, just be aware that Electrocute was nerfed. Harvest is a very strong choice for both transformations if you wish. And everyone's favorite little pony has finally arrived. Receiving buffs in the last round propelled him a bit more. He hasn't seen quite the win rate jump and the play rate jump as some of these other champions. However, you are seeing a lot of high elo players posting screenshots of disgusting KDAs and damage, so his snowball is certainly more prevalent. His pressure with his speed, very nice. And if you have Predator, well, you just basically become a prancing pony Ferrari and off you go. You have the dive, the giant hitbox, a fear. All of these add together nicely for Hecarim. Just don't forget to add that little bit of tankiness to increase your sustainability in the late game when you are an engaged tool. And finally on this page, don't forget about Warwick. Yes, he is a shadow of his former self from the early in the season. He is not very much seen in Diamond. He just gets exploited way too much past a certain point in the game. But if you like playing something like Jax and you hate Jax like me, go play Warwick. He can accomplish just the same things in silver and gold. You will have that pressure, and if you're winning with him wherever you are, keep playing him. There's nothing wrong with Warwick. He's still fast. He has all the same positives he used to. He's just much weaker in terms of numbers. His heal is down, and while he doesn't have that many losing matchups in the jungle, maybe specifically Taliyah and Shaco are the notable ones, the others just bring a certain extra spice to their teams and to the games that enable them to carry a bit heavier. And now to close out, we're on this final page, some strong viable alternatives, champions that you can still use to climb, champions that are still strong, and that might actually end up being a higher tier pick in the coming weeks. I'm going to start off with Shyvana purely because she's seen a lot more play and return to what was her early season domination. She hasn't quite reached that peak, thank goodness, but you can definitely farm, and you can take a dragon, and then you can take a herald, and then you can beat the enemy team in fights. Pretty straightforward actually. And that's why she's great in low elo, and definitely for someone who doesn't want to, you know, babysit their lanes as much but wants to be the strongest person on the team. You can easily dish out the most damage, have the most CS, and become a monster in team fights with that ultimate. Kha'Zix, well, of course, I'm saying this a lot this video, but he isn't as strong as he used to be. However, if you go that Dark Harvest along with your E reset, you can wreak havoc in team fights, which is something you could struggle with before with Electrocute. You use your full combo on one target, well then you know, now what? With the Dark Harvest, you can get those resets, pick up those souls, and your damage sticks with you throughout the whole fight. That's something that's very, very useful. I main Zyra, so I don't think I need to tell you how I found this out, but I definitely died a lot. Then we have Jarvan and Ekko. Jarvan Jarvan still brings his EQ combo, his devastating ultimate, much like Amumu. He can do a ton of damage once he gets a few items, something that can be used for a lot of pressure. And Ekko, while he doesn't have that exact same pressure, his damage and scaling is absolutely insane. And if you can get a few ganks off with your W and your E close down in the early game, burn some flashes, you have dive potential, and all the great things that make Ekko a good pick overall. However, he is still niche and mostly played by people that main him anyway. And finally, Lee Sin, I'm only putting him just because of his popularity, his skill ceiling, and his flash. If that's something you're after, I really recommend getting to a certain point in rank before you start to picking up, because Lee Sin directly rewards fluidity with mechanics and secondary knowledge of his abilities. By that I mean, you just have to be able to do them without thinking about them too much. Alright, that concludes the latest edition of Top Junglers and all the junglers that should see you through to the end of the season. If there is a dramatic shift in meta, I will of course make another one of these. The jungle meta really is insanely diverse at the moment, unless you are me and love to play Maokai and tanks. Yes, I do. What can I tell you? Thank you all very much for watching. Please like, comment, share if you enjoyed. Consider joining us on YouTube to support this channel and the increased production of the videos. Link is in the description. Subscribe for more jungle videos and League of Legends guides. And as always, I will see you all in the next tutorial.